Hello, I'm John Romero, and this is Sigil's behind-the-scenes video. I started on this project in early 2018. Sigil was something I worked on in my spare time whether I was at home or on a trip somewhere. On my trips, I travel around the world and talk about game development to developers at major events. This was a conference called We Are Developers in Vienna, Austria. There were a few thousand people in the room to hear me talk about Doom. Some of them brought copies of my games so I could sign them. It's really great to see how passionate people are about Wolfenstein, Doom, and Quake. Often, they want to tell me how much Doom meant to them, how Quake changed their life, how they used to play my games with their dad when they were little, and how much they loved Commander Keen. These are the fans that I made Sigil for, these passionate players that keep my games boxes in decent shape for decades as part of their treasured collection. They make me want to show them that Doom is still worth the effort to create for, that its gameplay still holds its own compared to today's shooters, that the nostalgia of Doom is not overimagined, that it is real. The typical crowd after I give a keynote has so many gamers that it takes about 3 hours long to hear everyone's story, sign something, and take a photo with them. Normally, when I'm creating a set of maps, I start working on one in the middle of the series. This is map 7, but when I was working on it, I was planning on making it map 5. I had so much fun making this massive map that when I was finished with it, it was too big for map 5. It had to be just before the final level. Let's listen to my wife Brenda ask me about how I'm starting the project's research. Yeah, I'm reading comments on Doom World about Episode 4, They Flesh Consumed. And one thing that somebody said was that the levels, they like Episode 4's levels a lot more than other Episode 2 and 3 for sure. And they noticed that the levels in Episode 4 were not really good for deathmatch. You know, they were single player design levels, but they weren't really good for deathmatch. And overall in Doom, the levels were made for single player, not made for deathmatch. You know, but I think that when in Doom 2, when American made map 7, that was like a really good deathmatch level. And so I was thinking that, why can't every one of these levels be a really good deathmatch level? And I had a couple ideas. I had an idea for that. I've had an idea for a long time about that, but I just came up with a new idea that I think is just like perfect, because single player levels are designed to be single player, to be intricate and interwoven and all this. Deathmatch levels should be simple, and they should have a completely different flow than single player levels. And I was thinking, wait a minute, why can't I have both of those things together? Why can't I have the complex single player map and a deathmatch map together? right? And the reason why I can do that is because when you play deathmatch, you spawn in a deathmatch spawn point. So why can't I have a piece of the level that you'll never see that's deathmatch only, and you spawn only in there for deathmatch, and the single player is there, and all of it is in one level. So when you play that level in deathmatch, you're in a completely separate part of the level, and then when you play a single player, you're in the single player part. So it's like 2 levels in one, and I've never seen anybody do that. You know, one of the things I was thinking about when I came up with the ideas, normally like multiplayer levels shouldn't have an exit button on them. Like they have an exit button in Doom because they're really a single player level, but if you have an exit button in a multiplayer level and a deathmatch level, that makes no sense because deathmatch ends at a frag count, you know, or something else, time limit or frag count. And I thought, you know, if we did have an exit on these deathmatch levels, that exit could let you into the single player level, right? But you could never go from single player into multiplayer. It would only be like one into the other and let you play around with it if you felt like it. But you know, that was just an idea. Like I'm not sure how well that would feel, but the fact that you could have 2 levels in one is really pretty cool. Like you could have, you know, E5M1 multiplayer is really cool. It uses the same kind of textures that level's already using, so the theme is kind of the same, and maybe some of the structures that are created in that level are used in the deathmatch level, but the deathmatch level is completely different flow, and everything is different about it. When you play a single player, it's the single player section of the level.
So basically you're delivering 18 levels by smashing 2 levels together.
And I've never made Doom deathmatch only levels. Yeah, I've never heard of a game doing that.
No, and it's certainly you've just doubled your work, but
yeah, the deathmatch levels are way easier than the single player ones. Single player ones are like switches and keys and puzzle solving and all that, monsters everywhere, and this is pure architecture. This is map 2 in the Doom Builder editor. It might not look like a ball of fun from overhead, just a bunch of lines and colored patterns that look abstract. But here's this level in action. Hey, is that an ocean outside the window? Let's check it out! Yep, that's the Mediterranean Sea. We were on a cruise and I was on SIGIL. This is what our stateroom looked like. Enough space for me to set up a Doom editing station. Here I'm working on map 3. You can tell I do a lot of work in 3D render mode. I'm working on a MacBook Air that's running a Windows 10 virtual machine, which is then running Doom Builder and Doom the game inside it. It's looking a little too bright in this room. I need to adjust the light levels real quick here. Just turn them down a little bit. I'm not sure if that's the right darkness, but I better check it out. Now I'm testing some of the changes that I've made. I typically modify, create, and test a single level hundreds of times. By the time I'm done making the level, I've killed these bozos hundreds of times. It's not even funny. Fast forward about 9 hours, and here I am again, at midnight, mapping up a sigil storm. I usually stay up until about 3 a.m. because I don't want to wake up too late. Here's Map 3's overhead view. On the left is the deathmatch level, and on the right is the single player level. Here's this level in action. Let's go back to where I made most of Sigil, in Galway. Here I am back making maps. In this shot, I'm working on map 4. See the lava textures and the green marble floor textures? How about this? You can see map 4 in the editor as I zoom around and I show you all the cool secrets and stuff. Here's this level in action. Baphomet's Domain. Let's take a look at some of Sigil's levels while they were in development. This is the last level I created, Map 1. Here's the starting room just after I made it. Here's the next section, and you can see how much of the level was created here. The big secret was not made at the end of level creation, but rather as part of the second room while it was being made. Now you can see how I detailed the mysterious pentagram void that you can only see from the secret area. Also, I teach the player about shooting the evil eyes here, as you have to shoot 5 of them to get through the map. When I designed map 7 first and used the evil eye as a trigger, I was planning on teaching the player about it in the first level all along. By the way, the map is pronounced Baphomet's Domain.
SIGIL.
Here's a shot of map 2 as I was creating the first area. The first part I made was not where you start, but the next location that you move to. I decided to go with the green marble motif instead of the skin walls. And here's the overhead view of map 2. It's not really that big, but it takes a lot longer to play than it looks. And here's the completed level including the deathmatch map. Its design was inspired by E3M6 Mount Erebus. Cages of the Damned. This is the first 15 minutes or so of creating map 3. I've got 3 of the pillars down and a few other places. Now you can see I've figured out that I wanted to make a U-shaped room with the blood pool in an enclosed space. Here's a lot more work done. A lot of gameplay is done at this point. I've got all the imp cages and the entire pillar hallway. I even have the entire blood hallway that leads to the end. I created the end room at this point and connected the imp cage walkway to the Red Skull Key area. Finally, you can see that I've added some secrets and created the deathmatch map. This ended up being a really interesting level to play because of the amount of times you revisit the main areas. Few maps have you replaying the same space this much. It's because of how circular the flow is. Paths of Wretchedness. This is map 4 after I made 2 of the major paths to the meeting point, but this time I was set on having 3 paths to battle through in any order. I didn't know what was going to happen at the meeting point yet. Here's the third fork mostly completed. I had just started on the Techno Hell Maze of Crushing Death. I knew it was going to connect to the meeting point at its end. Finally, I figured out what to do in the meeting point room and how to finish the map. The final area with the descending light and hell cracks looks neat. You can also see the deathmatch map is finished. I totally remodeled Doom 2's map 1 to work in Doom 1. Abaddon's Void. Here are the first 3 islands. I got the first building mostly done, then I moved to the island on the left. Originally, it was a pit with a bunch of tall rock walls, and the level had a sky. It didn't feel great, so I decided to change it to a building too. Now you can see the development of the building and the cave going through it. I decided the exit from the building would be a ramp to jump over to another island to the north. Now I've created Island 4 and outlined Island 5, the last one. 5 islands on map 5 in episode 5. I decided to define the map edges here. There's a huge lava lake and a big drop-off. I added the hellish lightning and started populating the level with demons and everything else. Here's where I decided having 2 cyber demons in ultraviolence mode was totally acceptable. And here's the completed deathmatch level. I was inspired by Quake's unofficial DM7 map for this design. We play Quake 1 Deathmatch in the office every day, and DM7 is one of the favorite maps, along with Tom Hall's CY2A. Unspeakable Persecution. Map 6 is supposed to be decently sized, just a little smaller than Map 7. This is the starting area. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to see when I came into the map. At this point, I decided that I wanted the player to go left and right from this room. I was just trying to establish the basic geometry, look, and feel of the level. I decided to make a huge room with hidden cacodemons that float over a lake of blood in the dark. Since there's a sky, the cacos look cool when they're flying towards you and they're silhouetted in the sky.
I figured out the path from the Kako room that led to the next area. Figuring out what that would look like was next. I didn't do anything on the right side of the map until I got the entire left side done. Now you can see the left side is finished since it ends at a teleporter back to the starting point. The Cyber Demon maze is done at this point. It's the coolest room I've made in any Doom map. I like the look of it and how to get through it. Also, the entrance to the secret level would be triggered in this room. You can also see I've mostly finished the deathmatch level. Some minor touch-ups and adding the connections from deathmatch to single player were part of finalizing this map. Nightmare Underworld. This was the first Sigil map that I created. It's the biggest map and it will take the longest time to play through. At the start I created a little room where you see the hanging marine. Then I made the imp trap room with a lava river through it. After that I made the cave area and put a lava lake surrounding the outside of the castle. Now I've defined a little more of the level and determined the length of the cave and that the player will be able to go around most of the castle. Here's a close-up of the green castle and cave system with enemies placed. A lot more got done at this point. I created the starting point and the cave and teleporter that connects with the first room I made. Then, when the player leaves the bigger cave, they have a choice of going left or right. I made part of the secret area you can see from the start room and the path up the hill to the wooden building that has the hell chasm in the middle of the Kako room. The interior lava passage is also made and you can exit it, but then I had to figure out what was next. I decided to make several towers that would teleport you somewhere when you tried to pass through them. The first one teleported you to the shotgunner room, the second one teleported you back to the Kako Demon Hellchasm room, and the third one progresses you forward to the next major section. Lots more was done at this point. I finished the right side section, the bottom part with the scary ledge walking, and the final boss building. I also added more secrets and did more work on the starting room. Finally, the level is done and the deathmatch map is complete as well. I modeled this one after my favorite Doom 2 deathmatch level, Map 7. Now you can play it with a Doom 1 flavor. Halls of Perdition. This is the boss level, Map 8, just after I started making it. You might be able to tell at this point that the part I created first was not the room where the player starts, but the hallway behind it. Then, I created the 2 pentagrams and tossed in a bunch of demons. The final locations of those pentagrams put them farther apart. Now you can see a lot more of the level has been made, and the flow between the 2 parts is in. And finally, here it is with a lot more detail and both bosses. Realm of Iblis. For the secret level, I wanted some kind of hell machinery working. I decided that crushing posts would be appropriately hellish to dodge around in various places, so I made a couple machines in the first room. Then I wanted to give the player the choice of 3 areas to go to. I made the first path on the bottom right side with 2 secret areas. I also have the castle frame done in the Dark Castle section. Now you can see I made more of the Dark Castle and started populating the level with stuff. I put a secret area in the Dark Castle lava and an exit out of that room. Now I added the leftmost lava room with the blue skull key in it. This was a fun trap room that gives you the super cool Berserk pack. I also added the evil eye above the Dark Castle, and out in the main area I put some hell machines in a cage. Now I've connected the Dark Castle to the final boss room. I hooked up some switches to provide access to the Yellow Skull key and a path back to the Yellow Skull door. The final room is a fun little maze with lost souls, and the maze walls lower until the final area is revealed with a Baron of Hell. Here it is, the final form of the secret level, complete with the deathmatch map. I really like this map so much that I considered swapping it with one of the other maps, but decided to keep it secret in the end. Before I go, I want to say how much I appreciate Buckethead making the music for Sigil. His original track is incredible, and the selection of pikes that I used are some of my favorites. But there are so many more I could have chosen. Ah well, that will have to wait for another time. Regardless, I'm very happy Buckethead was a Doom fan and was excited to work together. And finally, Christopher Lovell made some incredibly evil art. He named it simply Baphomet. It was originally commissioned by Thrasher Apparel, but they deemed it too hardcore evil. Thank you very much. Chris also made the incredible art used for the big box. That one is titled Shrine. Thanks, Chris. We have to work together again. Finally, I'd like to thank you for caring about Sigil, about playing more levels for a game that's over 25 years old, for believing that I was going to serve you up some more doomy goodness. Until next time, have fun.